Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 81 of the Late Challenge podcast with me, Paul Cope. And after a stellar debut last week, Rob Gutmann's retained his place. There's talk on the internet of a bloated squad. Will Robbo be able to get his way back in? All chat about Raheem Sterling's been on, his agent's been on, the camp's been on. We're going to talk about that later. But first, we're going to have a chat about Liverpool's game.
It's very
first win of the
topical,
season. Very
Raheem Sterling, I've just basically got that reference, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have it.
Is Gareth the new Raheem Sterling
Yeah,
then?
that is. I've heard his camp's already getting a statement
Oh,
ready.
right, cool.
That was wild, that, wasn't it? We can talk about this later. But...
Sorry, Gareth.
Yeah. Well, this was happening. I said it after I'd been away. Do you know, you do... When I went on holiday and Mo stepped in for me,
yes,
I'd done like 75 shows on this. Me and Robbo had done something like 150 shows together, just the two of us. You think, oh, I'll be missed when I go for a week. And you're looking at the comments like, Mo's great, isn't he? Like, you should get Mo on more. Will Kopi be able to get back? You're like, fuck off.
No, that's the problem. You actually thought about who you'd like to replace you and then didn't enjoy it when it happened.
Yeah, when it's that double-edged sword, isn't it? You want your replacement to like do really well because you want, well, obviously we want our mates to come in and it to continue nicely and our audience to be happy. But then there's that part of you going,
yeah, get someone shiting.
Yeah,
try that. Maybe it'll work.
Yeah, miss us more. I've just broken our new rule as well of swearing in the first 5 minutes. That's not good.
Is that a thing we don't do?
Yeah, not good for the algorithm.
Oh, is it not?
Yeah.
Why? Because the nans are tuning in and they.
Well, the YouTube doesn't. They like to monetize non-sweary content more.
Oh, do they?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah. But then, what me? It's a question Robbo and I have behind the scenes. Like, what are you in it for? Are you in for the YouTube ad money? Or you're in it for pleasing your audience?
YouTube ad money. I don't know.
The pennies.
I don't know.
The pennies.
No, I know there's a price on every time we say fuck.
Yeah.
That makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. Well, especially when you, like me, you can't help yourself.
I know, right?
And people criticize you for it. And
yeah,
I enjoy it. It's just, I actually blame my dad because I've done that thing growing up where, because he was so against it. I've rebelled against.
Was he anti-sweary?
Oh, we're way off top. You see, this is the thing about bringing in good guest hosts who embrace
who've got nothing to say for themselves, so diverting.
Straight off on a tangent, off the agenda straight away. Yeah, we could definitely do more than one show about my dad and his idiosyncrasies, to put it mildly. My dad before he died, wrote his own eulogy. I don't know whether I've ever talked about this. Yeah.
I
so
respect
basically
that.
Trying to control the narrative of what would be said about him afterwards. And even in his eulogy, he made a point of saying he didn't swear and he didn't like swearing. And I was like, you cheeky bat. That's a dig at me, that.
Did he? So he listed his qualities?
Yeah, he wrote his own qualities, yeah.
Wow. That's great.
It's wild, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Fair play. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Does it give you an idea?
If you did it, I presume you're saying... Your father is dead, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to be... So, God rest his soul. I presume he did it without a sense of humour. He did it like...
Oh, he did it absolutely seriously.
Straight.
Like, he expected us to just read it out. And my sister and I... No. It was wild, honestly. Like, I've got quite dark... Well, I've got a dark sense of humour. So that upsets some people. And especially around the topic of death... I have a very dark sense of humour because I'm very I'm not black and white about many things these days, but I'm quite black and white about death. Like, once you're dead, you're dead. Do you know what I mean? And so when my dad died, I'm like, well, he's dead now. And there's
no offending the dead, is there?
I think, yeah, well, exactly. And I think it actually goes back to when I was a kid. God, we are straight off on randomness here. I was an altar boy, so I was raised as a Catholic, and my mum basically encouraged me, in inverted commas, to become an altar boy to please my nan.
Right.
Which, looking back, was just like... I remember the day my mum ushered me into my nan's house because my mum was trying to please her mum. And she said, tell your nan. And
you're an altar boy.
And I went, Nan, I'm an altar boy now. And this is what my nan said. That's nice, son. Do you want a bowl of chicken soup?
Oh.
But she always offered me a bowl. We always had chicken soup. The chicken soup wasn't special because
was she Jewish Catholic?
Oh, is that a Jewish?
Yeah,
thing
Jewish
as well?
Chicken soup is very much a Jewish cultural thing. With matzo balls, but yes, and Jewish nans do chicken soup. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, so so then I ended up being an altar boy, getting up at like 8 o'clock every Sunday morning for the next 3 years to please me nan when she didn't give a shit. But anyway, the point of that tangent was I used to do funerals as an altar boy. And
that was your speciality.
So, yeah. Well, that was altar boys. That was your favourite one because you get tips.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, like the people would slip you a £5
For doing what?
for being a good altar boy at the funeral.
Oh,
yeah, but
okay.
then sometimes the priesthood. I mean, these are do you know when you think about your formative years and how you view the world, like lots of this stuff was going on. So I'm like 10 years old, watch it, and I remember after a few funerals thinking, why is no one who dies a knobhead? Like, why is everybody who dies great? Because they'd always do the eulogy and everyone would be like, he was fantastic, she was great, she was a saint. And I'm sitting there thinking, because I was a maths kid, I was thinking, the percentage of people I already know who are idiots isn't aligning with what's said about people at their funerals.
I've got a story right about that, which me and my wife Michaela talk about a lot. We went to stay about a year or so ago country hotel for a weekend in Lancashire, and it was a nice day. And we were sat having a drink on the terrace beer garden, this English country hotel, and sort of just adjacent to the beer garden was a marquee where a wedding was going on, right? And you could hear the wedding speeches like really clearly on the PA. And this fella, clearly he must have been the groom. He got to the bit in the speeches where he was giving shout out to those that were no longer with us, right? And he said, and we just never got over this, how funny it was. He goes, I think we should raise a glass to Grandad. And he goes, we don't all agree with what he did, but and he had us at that. We don't all agree with what he did. We probably spent
and he left it there.
He left it there. Obviously, the room knew what Grandad had done, right? Not all of them agreed with it, apparently. But me and Michaela spent the next days, weeks, in fact, much of the last year trying to work out what he did that we didn't all agree. What was the scale of terrors?
That's a podcast. We could do a spin-off podcast, couldn't we?
Well, we said it could be a book, right, where it was working. You start with that premise, or a Netflix series. Yeah, we don't all agree with what Grandad did, and it builds because, it could be we don't all agree with his mild gambling habit, or we don't agree with the fact that he abducted children. Or it could be quite the spectrum.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my story on how do we get here?
This is what happens a lot.
This is good.
You're embracing.
I said I didn't want to talk about football much, but we will do.
Yeah,
anyway.
Exactly. I don't know how we got here.
Oh, death. Death's a good one. Death's a lot of material, once you start talking about death. Yeah. We talk about your dad's eulogy that he wrote himself.
I don't even know how we got to my dad's eulogy, but that's the reason I got into that thing was because as soon as I saw my dad, he made us promise not to, he left us this death pack which we couldn't open.
Sorry, this is just funny.
No, it's that's why I call it that. Like, so he passed away at like 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd had cancer for a while, so we were expecting it. And so my sister, my mum's lying on the couch, already starting her grieving process. Me and my sister are sitting there. My sister's about 2 years older than me, and we look at each other and you're waiting for the people to come and collect the body, the funeral people, because they're 24-hour service, or very slick these days. And she looks at me and I look at her and we say, should we open the pack?
Oh my God.
Because we haven't been able to read it.
Is it like a box?
It was like my dad was a very basic man as well. Like, so my dad was one of those fellas who's like, bury me in a cardboard box, don't waste money. And so it was just in one of those battered cardboard, like paper folder things.
Oh, right.
And so he had two things. I might have talked about this on the show before, I can't remember. There was his pre-written eulogy, which he'd clearly taken a while to write, and then a list of tasks for me and my sister to do.
That's nice.
Which was about 5 or 6 pages long.
No.
And he'd handwritten it, and put down the right-hand side, like 2 columns, like drawn with a ruler, for us to tick off when we'd completed each one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and we both laughed. It was very it was a nice moment for me and my sister, because we could laugh about who our dad was, and because this was just pure Eric Cope. Like, he, and we both said, like, he'll definitely come back to haunt us if we don't do his list and tick it off.
Yeah.
But the list itself it's an entire show, the list. I told some of the lads about it who came to the funeral, and I just told them bits of it, and they were like, Wow. But the eulogy, that's how we got to it.
Yeah.
So you said, did we read it out? And I was like, no, I'm not participating in this thing I've watched my whole life growing up where we just say bullshit about someone. You can't just write your own eulogy and you can't say what people think of you. That's not up to you.
I suppose though, yeah, but as a document, as a testament, it would say more about the human being in question than anything anyone could say. I know it's not. I agree with you. It's not appropriate to have used it in the actual funeral because you'd have made a bit of a mockery, as he had himself, of the entire process by writing it. I suppose you'd almost want it as an insert in one of those funeral pamphlets, so everyone could actually read it for their own wry amusement.
I think you're right. I think I'd have, in hindsight, I'd have strategically given it to the members of the family and friends who I think would see the humour in it.
Yes, you'd have to go to the right people who wouldn't just think ill or take literally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to, that sort of thing. Like the way you're describing it, can only be distributed to those who will see it affectionately rather than cynically. Well, cynically? It's beyond cynically the way you can view that, isn't it?
Oh, well, I view it in all of the above ways.
My father, thank God, is still alive. He's 82, going strong. But I was having dinner with him last night, him and my mum, and he loves getting on to morbid stuff. He's been talking about his death for a long, long time. That's why it's made me morbidly fearful of my own mortality. He was talking me through. He sounds like the opposite of your dad in the sense that he's very technically minded. He's got a digital will, he was proudly telling me. So that pack, probably he'll forget to tell someone the password. It'll be absolutely inaccessible.
That'll be digitally encoded somewhere. And
yeah, I don't know what the fuck he means. But I can guess what a digital will means, but I can imagine it being layered in complexity and some sort of... And when you actually get at it, it will be an absolute, like your dad's, a treasure trove of an insight into his personality more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it will 100% do that, effectively do his version of the tick list. There will be a list of things to bear in mind.
Well, it did inspire me because I think, as you say, it gives you more of an insight into the person than anything anyone else could say.
Yeah.
But into actually who they were. And I was laughing about it afterwards because I was like, when my time comes, I'm going to do the same thing, but it's going to be a proper piss take.
An ironic version.
Yeah, just like, and I'm going to say to people, I'm going to put in it to whoever's left behind, I will haunt you. I want this read out word for word, and I want these tasks done. And I'll just do lots of like ridiculous things that they have to do, or they'll be offending my memory.
Can I just ask, without getting too heavy about it, did your father do it when he knew he was dying, or had he done it well before?
Well, this was an interesting thing, right? So I assumed he'd done it once he'd been... Because he was diagnosed with cancer in the January and passed away in the September, so it was quite quick.
Right.
So I thought once he'd got the diagnosis, he must have thought, I'd best get this bit done. But as we were working our way through his list, this was one of the funniest things about it. As we were working through his checklist more than his eulogy, we realised he's been making this for years.
No.
Because there were bits, and these were the bits where I
well, that's good. I'm glad.
Laugh. It was like, there was bits where it was saying like, to inform his mates that he died. So it was like...
They're that close, like, they weren't going to find out.
Yeah, but this is how good it was. It was someone who he always saw once a year or something.
Okay, yeah, so fair.
But you'll love this bit, I think. It said, let my mate Ken know that I've passed away. His number is X. And then, obviously, he'd been writing it for so long. Ken had died in the meantime. So he'd crossed out Ken and put, like the little arrow underneath, and put Ken's wife X, and then put like the number had changed to change the number. So it turned so he'd been writing for so long. He's editing his own request list.
I wonder how. That's much better. I'm glad that was the answer, by the way, because I thought doing it once he had the difficult news. Just it's a bit sadder and a bit more complex.
Yeah.
The fact that
it actually says more, on your point of revealing who a person is.
Yeah.
It says more about something he's been writing for like 10 years.
Yeah, that's Watson.
Pen on paper.
That's
like,
Watson.
And didn't
really?
And think as well, he didn't go, and this is sums up as well, doesn't want to waste the paper. So he didn't think after 5 years of editing it, I'll write a new one.
Yeah.
Ken died 5 years ago now, I'll just write a new one that says let his wife know. he just kept editing it with like different bits.
What year was your father born? Because he sounds like a man born in the 1800s with his kind of that kind of mentality. When was he born? He's got to be younger, potentially younger than my dad.
Yeah, he passed away when he was 77, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, which was 2 years.
So what year was he born then?
So he'd be 3 years younger than you. So he was born in 46.
Okay, mine's 42. Okay, all right, yeah. It's interesting though. Yeah, I think it depends what you. My dad was he wasn't born in England, but he came to England in the 60s, and he very much sort of got into the. I'd say I wouldn't say he was a full-on hippie, but the 60s culture affected him. So he's always thought of himself as unerringly modern. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Proud, and he was a sciencey guy. Did physics at university, and he worked for IBM for a long time. They're the computer giants, and so he's always been on the latest technology, and always trying to lecture me as to what I should be getting into. And also, I'll say this man's name again because you'll probably get some level of it. Elon Musk is his hero.
I love that your dad's into all that though.
It's mad. He's
for
mad.
his generation. That's unusual, isn't it?
Yes, he is. He's very unusual for his generation. Yeah. You familiar with Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I love Curb.
Larry David is the closest.
Really?
Representation of my father I've ever
Really?
seen on screen. Very similar, yeah. Except that Larry's got a good sense of humour on himself. I would say my father's equivalent to Larry, but without quite the same self-awareness. Yeah, but just as capable of sort of getting into situations where he doesn't quite understand why people are upset or offended by his very logical take on life.
Yeah, but I've often thought this about like living with that Larry David character from Curb Your Enthusiasm wouldn't be as funny as it is to watch, would it?
No,
because the person actually in real life.
No, as my mother will testify.
Yeah, so
yes.
It probably sounds like he's quite similar to that.
Yes, he is.
It's funny to watch from the outside, but inside, he's just he can just be a miserable guy.
I'm kind of wishing he was dead, like your dad, Paul. So there's no danger of him seeing this. He might see this. Someone might show him. I don't mean that. If he does, if he see this, he won't.
No, and I'm sort of joking.
Sorry, making jokes about your father's death. I'm sorry about that.
I say miserable get in the fondest way.
I know. I can tell.
I think we're all. Especially, when Rob and I started this podcast, we started it and we both said, like, unashamedly, as two middle-aged men, and we're going to talk about middle-aged men stuff because how many people out there are doing that? Do you know what I mean? And it resonates with a lot of people. And I think this is part of it. Becoming like a grumpy old fella is part of your rite of passage, isn't it? Like, I've noticed that. Like, I've become the guy walking around our house, turning lights off, going, why are all the lights? Why are the 10 lights on in the house? And I've had to
I've got that habit. My dad always did that to me.
I'm slowly training myself to relax a little bit more.
Does that make you extra green though that you're turning lights out? Hasn't that come full circle? It used to be the preserve of grumpy old and young minge bags. By the way, now I think it's for the environmentally aware. Oh, my dad was fanatical about it. You couldn't walk out of a bedroom without him going, "You haven't turned the light off," and that was when he was a young man. I do that.
My dad was extreme. I could be in the kitchen, not a very big kitchen in my dad's house. So the fridge was on one side of the galleyway, and the cupboards were on the other side.
The island.
Well, there was no island. It was just like cupboards on each side of the room.
I get it.
And a few feet in the middle. So I'd open the fridge to get say the butter out, and then I'd turn to the other side because that's where you'd have your plate to butter your bread.
Yes.
And by the time I turned back to the fridge would be shut. And I'd be like, I didn't even see him come in. But he'd swoop in, close the door, because he'd be like, why have you left the fridge open? And I'm like, it's for 5 seconds while I buttered the bread, and then I was going to stop wasting electricity. And you're like, okay.
My dad was so it's a similar vibe, but the contradiction was you couldn't keep a light on beyond necessary amount of time. But with the central heating, me and my mum and my brother and sister used to be boiling in the house. We go, Dad, it's too hot. So we'd open the door. And he'd go mad because the central's heating on. What have you opened the door for? He goes, but we're too hot. He goes, no, you're not. I've got the thermostat on exactly the right level. We go, but we're too hot. No, you're not. He decided.
No, you're not a great.
He decided that the thermostat made it empirically a fact that we weren't too hot.
Gaslighting your own experience of temperature.
Yeah, that was one of those moments, when you're about 11 or 12 and you think, you've lived a lot longer than me and have more experience and knowledge than me, but I don't subscribe to your worldview entirely, Dad.
God, we talk about this all day, but those moments in life when you start, because when you're young, you think your mum and dad know everything, don't you?
Yeah.
And when those cracks start to appear, you're like, that's one of those moments where you're like,
yeah. I'm not sure. I think it's a good thing that happens. I don't like the idea that my kids think they've spotted any cracks in my makeup. They're bound to have. When they do occasionally joke with each other about that kind of thing, and I think, well, you're just wrong. If you think you're better than me, or you're smarter than me, or are more aware than me about everything, my attitude is an arrogant one, which is, no, you're just wrong. I was right when I was about my parents. I was smarter than them and spotted cracks in their makeup, but there's no way it applies this time round. No, they're just wrong. There you go. Should we talk about football?
Yeah.
Before this is becoming like therapy, I might start crying in a minute.
Well said. But we will talk about football because it's a funny switch, that, isn't it? I'd always think this when you're writing the description of what the show's about.
Yeah.
And we write it in advance these days, and then people are tuning in and be like, "You didn't say you were going to talk about dead dads at the start of the show."
I think we got good feedback last week. I wonder if this week not so much.
Yeah, the thumbnail of this of the show on YouTube is something about Liverpool winning a game. People will be tuning in, going, "What?" So we are going to talk about Liverpool's first win of Premier League win of the season. A bit of Mo Salah, and we're going to talk about you going to the game.
Oh yeah,
you had a little away trip, didn't you?
I did.
And then we'll see what we've got time for before we go into the Patreon. There's Chelsea madness and an Everton transfer link I want to talk about. But let's talk about the match then, and then we'll talk about your away trip afterwards. What did you think of it? Because it's an interesting dynamic, because we often have. I watched it at home. Robbo watched it at the game, so we've got that again here. What was it like at the game to watch? How did the crowd find it?
It was a lively away end. In fact, it wasn't an end. They gave us most of the side of the stadium, which, as someone who goes to most aways, I like, because at the end of the day, I like going away. I like the vibe away. There's always, it's nine times out of 10, it's a great atmosphere in any Liverpool away section, away end. But the truth of watching games behind the goal, and Anfield, my season ticket, I'm quite halfway liney, so I'm a bit spoiled like that. So I can see what's going on throughout the game.
Yeah.
Whereas away from home, you're usually behind the goal, and you get one half of a game, and then there's the other half, another game's going on in the distance.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't mind that. I'm used to it. I've been going to Liverpool away matches for 40 odd years. So I'm used to it. But it is a bit of a treat away to be able to see the entire game. And this was one that, merited it in a way, because it's the new era. It's what does Arne Slot football look like? So I wanted to see see the actual machinations of it, the tactics properly. So it was good to see it. And so to answer your question, the Liverpool end in inverted commas was a very lively one. Everyone I usually see at Ways was there. Even though it was a 12:30 kickoff, there was a vibe in the ground, like people had got themselves prepared, should we say? Yeah. I think those coaches had been well stocked with tinnies on the way down. So people were in lively mood, and the atmosphere was good.
Were most people still doing it as a go in the same day? Because you went the day before, didn't you? Considering
a couple of people I knew had come to Ipswich the day before and were going home that afternoon. Me being indulgent with myself as I am, decided to stay over the Friday and the Saturday. I went down with Steve Graves, who you know well, and my two lads, and we stayed because I knew it was 12:30 kickoff. I thought, well, okay, if we go this day of the game, we'll have to get up at 4 in the fucking morning, right? It's a long drive to Ipswich. So we stayed in Cambridge, which is an hour's drive from Ipswich. So. And I love a proper English, old, historic city town. And I like to explore the pubs in old, historic English city towns. And Cambridge is full of them. And me and Steve had a nice time in particular. My lads got to watch us drinking nice cask ale pints in traditional pubs. So we had a lovely time. Got up about 8ish the next morning, drove to Ipswich, and just bedded in. And then we spent the afternoon, because it was an early kickoff. So what time were we done by? 2:30. Did something with the Anfield wrap afterwards with our mate John Gibbons, and afterwards Ipswich was our oyster, and we just repeated what we'd done in Cambridge and in Ipswich, which it's not the prettiest place in the world, Ipswich, but it's quite interesting, and you can find pockets of things which are really historic and worth seeing. It's good old docks area. It's quietly a much more Tudor town than anyone would have thought if had they not been there. And I enjoyed its pubs. Yeah, it was good.
Busy, lots of, full allocation we always get, but
I don't go to those places. That's the thing.
We
managed to sort of get through a long drinking session in Ipswich, or visiting a pub session, without actually getting to the main high street, I don't think, because we were told there was a Revolution and other bars, and we never saw anything like that. So we were always in sort of back streets and sort of slightly off pitch areas, so which were not that busy, no, even for a Saturday. But that's how I liked it.
Mm. So, back to the inside the ground, and what was it like in there? What was the vibe like coming into Slot's first game? Optimistic, positive? Because it was a classic.
I can't really. I mean, I can only talk about that in the broadest sense of what I'd experienced in the week beforehand around Liverpool. But in the ground, as I said, people were lively. I probably only got rocked up 15 minutes before the thing kicked off. The concourse, it was a fucking hot and sweaty day in Ipswich. It was like 26, 27 degrees. And their concourse is very claustrophobic. I a lot of times in ways I'd happily sort of get in a bit earlier, find a spec, meet friends I know, and sit and have a pint or so on the concourse. It was not to be done there.
Oh, really?
Went straight to my seat, and yeah. So I can't really answer that one. What was the mood in the ground going into it? Pretty soon after it kicked off, I think it was a tetchy first half. It really was, because we weren't great. I mean, we can rewrite history after the event, because it's a great second half and a really good result, and just see the first half as something calm that was building towards something excellent. All I can do is be honest about it. And by half time, as people are walking back and forth to the bar or to the loos, I was bumping into lots of lads I knew. And everyone says to each other, "What do you think of that? What do you think of that?" And everyone goes, "Shite, shite." That was the quick one-word answer. Obviously, it's a bit extreme, and and people that aren't in the place to do a proper analysis of that at that time of the day. And it wasn't shite. It was just a bit disappointing. If you wanted to find, at the end of the day, we weren't giving away many chances. But we weren't really in control either. We weren't making chances. Strange series of contradictions. I was looking at a lot of individual performances and thinking, oh, Trent's doing well. So-and-so's doing well. He's doing okay. No one was having a stinker. But it seemed like I was going, I feel like we're lacking a bit of pace on the counter-attack here. The referee was doing everyone's head in as well. That didn't help. I remember Gibbo saying to me there was 22 fouls in that first half. And I said, yeah, and 21 of them he gave to fucking Ipswich.
Well, do you know what was funny? On the telly, it was coming across that the Ipswich fans were getting pissed off with him because they thought he was favouring us.
Yeah. It's because it was a yellow they didn't like, but that was
it. They got a few bookings, but there was a lad who could have got sent off easy.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
I don't know whether that came across in the ground, but how did the team selection go down going into the match?
Oh yeah, there was. I forgot about that.
Because I think I haven't seen too much, and it's always funny, isn't it? Because ultimately you win, the second half's great, which we'll come on to, but picking Quanza is as Van Dijk's partner in the first game is a big call, I think.
But not a surprise.
But not a surprise off last year. No Curtis Jones in the midfield, I think, was another big call, considering the start of pre-season. And then no Gomez in the squad at all is obviously a big deal, potentially.
Yeah.
So what was the chat around that before the game?
Well, I mean, when we knew that, remember, the teams are now out earlier than they used to. It's not an hour before kickoff, it's out 15 yeah, which it can't be too early for me. I love the anticipation and thinking about it, talking about it. I'd looked at this, once Slot had said, I think at his press conference the day before, he was asked a question, any injuries? He went, no, fully fit squad, which is fucking unprecedented. I don't think Jurgen ever once got to say that. So, okay. So once you do the maths, the calculation on it, I was going, well, there's 19 you can pick, 11 and 8 subs, isn't there? Is that right? Yeah, there's 19 who can make the cut. It's 11 and 9 subs, 8 outfield subs. I think that's right. Yeah, so it's 20 players you effectively have on the pitch or the bench. I was going through the names and I said, do you know what? One of Endo or Gomez is going to miss out here. They're just not going to get picked because they can't fit them all in unless you do something wild like leave Harvey Elliott out, which he's not going to do. So there was that aspect to it. The team itself was, I think, man for man, the team he started with against Sevilla the week before.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone speculated about his Sevilla starting 11, goes, oh, is he signalling who he's going to start against Ipswich? Well, yes, he was. Absolutely, 100% he was. I mean, there's a few people said, well, McAllister had looked rusty. Maybe Trent needs another week's training. So maybe that's not a literal team, but he was literally that team. That was the team he picked. The news that was filtering through just before kickoff was the Gomez situation. I think Paul Joyce had come out on social media and on Twitter or whatever and said that Gomez had been left out whilst he considers his options ahead of the transfer window deadline. Now that just shouted to me code for he's about to get transferred. And I still think that's kind of possible. I mean, a couple of days have passed since then, but normally when someone's suddenly left out of a match day squad, and I didn't think he'd get left out. I know it was him or Endo really, but still.
But I was thinking about this though, because you say him or Endo, but also bear in mind Tsimikas.
Or Tsimikas, yeah, you could have left him out.
And last year, what we were seeing, and this goes into something I want to go on to talk about the ruthlessness that we saw. I think there has been a big shift here already without anyone really talking about it. And I think there are echoes of Shankly to Paisley. Not that I'm an expert of the history of Liverpool, and I often get shouted at for this, but one of Shankly's, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness thing is the same as Klopp's, which is the emotional attachment to players.
Yeah.
And staying loyal to players. And Klopp used to get accused of this as well. Staying loyal to lads too long and picking them or looking after them. And we would defend, whilst we would criticise him for it, we'd also defend them on the basis that, yeah, but that's how he creates this.
You can't have one without the
ecosystem.
Other. Yeah.
Whereas it looks to, because so where that led to was, I think he would look after Gomez. So Gomez would be on the bench ahead of Tsimikas, for example. Well, and there might, I mean, I'm clear. I don't think it was all purely emotional stuff with Klopp. I'm guessing he just thought Gomez is a better player than Tsimikas anyway, so I'd rather him on my bench. But I think in a number of ways, the fact that Endo and Tsimikas were on the bench ahead of Gomez, there's lots of different strands to that one team selection, because there's the potential transfer element, which maybe trumped everything else anyway.
Yeah.
But then there is he's been working with Tsimikas all summer as well. So clearly, I think it looks like he's happy with Tsimikas as a backup left back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, Gomez is so multifunctional that I'm not saying he's always the first name on the bench, and consistent, by the way, that you'd always kind of find a space for him.
Yeah.
But then I get the idea that maybe Endo makes the cut because he's the only orthodox six in the squad. I get that Tsimikas makes the cut because he's played all of pre-season and done all right as well.
And Robbo hadn't.
So you might have thought, no. And also, if you want to continue playing a certain way, Tsimikas is a sort of like for like with Robbo, albeit not the same level, whereas Gomez isn't.
Yeah.
So I got that. But the way it was briefed, well, the Joyce story suggested that Joe's situation at Liverpool in the broader sense is the bigger issue. You can almost forget the selection dilemma element of it. It doesn't really matter whether if Gomez was going to stay forever, whether he would have been picked or not. I'll take your point about Klopp. I think it sort of signals to me that they really, I mean, let's put it this way. Here's one thing that's, it's maybe not occurring to me the first time now, but I can say it out loud. It's one thing that's inescapable is Liverpool have signalled to Joe Gomez that he does not have a future at Liverpool, right? If you just say you're not in the squad for this game because you're allowed to consider your future, we're respecting that, you don't want to get injured ahead of a transfer, because that's what that statement from Joyce, that, statement by proxy by Paul Joyce is saying. So if that's the case, Joe is all but out the door here. There's always a way back, of course. I'm not saying in a bitter, nasty way, but all parties have shaken on something, you feel. Now, the next question is begged is a deal imminent? And if it is, who with? And if it is imminent, so I don't know who, say it's whatever club, we come back to that. That must, I really hope, suggest that Liverpool have replaced Joe Gomez in the squad, right? I mean, we've said since the beginning of the summer when no one thought Gomez was going anywhere that we need another centre-back, right? That's inescapable. Well, we bloody definitely need one if Joe Gomez is going. That's not even up for grabs, is it? Imagine going to the season with just 3 centre-backs. You wouldn't want to be leaving that to chance. Now, you've seen Liverpool take some risks with how they leave their squad balance before, but that would be taking the piss, I think.
But it's a big one, isn't it? Because, as you said before, the thing with losing a player like Joe Gomez is he's your multifunctional player as well. So he plugs lots of holes.
Well, exactly.
So if you lose him, and I know there's talk of Joe being 45 million quid to Newcastle, and there's that, 45 million quid for Joe Gomez is quite good. But straight away, I'm back to, well, in a vacuum, it's
45 million can't play at left back for you or centre mid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then, you've got to replace, as you say, you've definitely got to spend that money then. And who are you going to buy that's as good, if not better, than Joe Gomez and can play multiple positions?
That's the problem.
Who is that lad? And is he going to accept what role in the squad is he going to take? Because what you do then, and I was saying at the end of last season, at the beginning of last season, there's this thing. I know I've got the king of transfers in, so we can talk about this, but like, there's this thing that I think it gets lost all the time of who Van Dijk's your main centre back, so you're buying to play with him, and I'm like, no. That's not how our competitors act. That's not how Pep Guardiola acts. Pep Guardiola says, who's the best centre-back I can buy? And if he's an upgrade on my best centre-back, I'll spend 75 million on him, like he did last year. And then that lad comes in, and all of a sudden, you've seen Diaz being pushed out, Ruben Diaz being pushed out a little bit. And you're thinking, that's mad. But it's a proper competition for places then.
I love that.
And your best player has to get better to stay in the side. And so if we lose Gomez, my thought would be, well, you don't want to buy another £45 million centre-back. You're not going to buy an £80 million centre-back. But I don't know who that is. But that doesn't mean anything because I didn't know who Zubimendi was until...
the vibe coming out of the club, and we saw it over the Zubimendi saga, is that Liverpool only want to buy the real deal. The guarantee, what's the word? Not a project, someone who's ready to go. Yeah. Absolutely will slot in and be, no pun intended, and do a job and do the top job. So I think they do want to do what you're suggesting, which you say Guardiola would do. I mean, the candidates, Inasio's been heavily linked. Asio from Sporting Lisbon. Now, he's not an orthodox centre-back, but he's a left-footed centre-back, and we haven't actually got one of them.
Yeah.
And he can do a bit at left-back, allegedly, and he's even done a bit in centre-mid, although I checked his record at Sporting, and I think in 163 games, he's played 161 at centre-back and 2 at left, so doing a bit at left, which is not the same as Gomez, right? Yeah. So I'm dubious about that one. But regardless who the name is, you can't be letting Joe Gomez sign on any dotted line for anybody else until we've got someone through the door first. You can't, even if you've got someone who's given us his word. Zubimendi is a cautionary tale here, right? You don't want to find Joe Gomez is pulling up for Villa or whoever, and the next day we think we've got, let's pick a name, Hincapié from Bayer Leverkusen, top-rated centre-back. But Hincapié said he'll come, and then he's changed his mind because he loves Germany more. Do you know what I mean? And then we're stuck with 5 days left of the window, and we've only got 3 centre-backs. Yeah. That's the attendant risk here. But the implications, going back to the start of I think the question, the point is, the knock-on effects of this Gomez thing had everyone talking, because it implies that he's 2/3 out the door already, right? Because that kind of revelation wouldn't have come out had that not been the case. Mm-hmm. And if he is, there has to be another lad who is more than 2/3 already in the door that we don't know about. Mm-hmm. Because one doesn't work without the other. And then the third intriguing element to this is the story from earlier in the summer that Liverpool and Newcastle very nearly did a trade with Anthony Gordon and Joe Gomez. And Newcastle still need a centre-back. They haven't done a deal on Mark Gahey from Crystal Palace. Liverpool would still very much like Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon would still very much like Liverpool. So you could talk yourself into believing credibly, I think, that this window will end with Liverpool having signed Gordon with a Partex on Joe Gomez and having brought in a centre-back. I actually hope that happens, and I think there's a reasonable chance it would happen. But who's the centre-back, Paul? Well, we have a rumour, don't we? I'm just remembering.
Yeah,
intriguing one. Yeah.
Should we touch on that fit?
The betting thing that caused the rumour yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I saw it on the Anfield Wraps Twitter feed, which
Well, I was
presumably just out the blue.
Well, I don't know how, one of the lads on the Anfield Wrap, I saw it on our WhatsApp chat we have there yesterday, that the betting started moving in for Jared Branthwaite to come to Liverpool. Man United have been favourites all summer long. Have had a couple of bids turned down in the 50 million mark, and Everton have said absolutely not. And then suddenly from nowhere, Liverpool came in at 2-1, ahead of United at 3-1. It moved briefly, I think, to 5-6 on to Liverpool. More chance of him moving to Liverpool than staying at Everton. Well, then the bookies his name seemed to disappear off it altogether, which people were nuts about. Yeah, so it goes, oh my God, they're not even taking bets on this. Then he popped back on at about 2 or 3-1, and I think that's where the betting might have settled. I haven't checked it this afternoon.
Okay, well, I've not checked it since yesterday, but the screenshot that the Anfield Wrap shared was where will Jared Branthwaite be on the 5th of September, which club? And Liverpool were 4-5, so 5-4 on. Everton was 6-4, Man United 5-1, Man City 25-1. So we were shorter odds and odds on that he would be at us as opposed to Everton just after the transfer window shut. But that's just come from nowhere, presumably. Have you heard any murmurs of that in the summer?
There's not been a media story. So it feels like one of those where a couple of lads somewhere think they've got some inside track and they tell their mates and they all go lump on, and the bookies see a handful of bets. I don't know how many it takes. We should have our mate Phil Blundell to inform us. I'm never sure how many bets it would take to make the bookies nervous, because it's a strange market, the transfer betting market, because it's very imperfect, the knowledge that's there. Do you know what I mean? It's very difficult to set odds. And one person in the know, a cousin of a cousin, can really clean up if they get it wrong. So it may only take a handful of people
to move the market.
To move the dial on that. And therefore the bookies go, oh, we're not going to get caught out here, whatever happens.
Yeah. Because it would be a wild transfer, wouldn't it?
It is. Funnily enough, earlier in the window, when we were talking on Anfield Wrap transfer shows about this, I put forward the idea. So why can't we sign Jared Branthwaite? He'd be ideal for us, by the way. It's when he was linked to United. He's left-footed. He's 22. He's exactly the sort of future centre back all the big clubs would dream of having. I think this profile anyway. But of course, Liverpool can't be in the mix because Everton. At the end of the day, they need dough. I accept that we'd probably have to overpay, because in an even field, if they could sell to Liverpool, City, United for 60 million, they'd rather do anyone but Liverpool.
Yeah.
But if Liverpool overpay by 10 million, don't tell me that's not money Everton couldn't use, right? Of course, there's the PR disaster of it from their point of view, in as much as their fans would really not like that to happen. But at the end of the day, and no disrespect to my blue friends, fuck them. Yeah. People talk about it as though I was saying, people go, oh, you can't go Everton, you can never sell him to Liverpool. I go, well, what's going to happen if they do? Literally, what's going to happen? I know back in the day when Nick Barmby moved, there was all kinds of horrible, dark threats that Barmby's world would be turned upside down, and the implications of violence were everywhere. Well, in this day and age, really, is this what we're saying? Everton's fan base are so feral that a player can't move from one to another because they won't like it. They don't have to like it. But it would be just what it is.
Well, do we know his background as well? Because we talked about Anthony Gordon a few weeks ago, and I didn't realise until the rumours started that he was a boyhood Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
So is that the same with Branthwaite? I think we always have this idea that if someone's been a youngster at Everton, they're an Evertonian.
Yeah.
But that isn't obviously necessarily the case. There's lots of famous high-profile examples of the opposite being true. So let's say he is either a Liverpool fan or not arsed, like he's just not an Everton fan. And he's like, well, I'd rather play for Liverpool. And as you say, they could get more money by selling him to us. Well, I wouldn't. And from a PR perspective, the club can just put it on the player.
They said he's insisting.
Say, well, he's insisting on going to Liverpool, and we got an extra 10 million out of it. So,
I mean, I suppose the fans could say, yeah, he can insist all he likes, but you could still say no, and there are no pun intended or no joke intended. There are red lines. You can't sell to Liverpool, even for X amount more. I mean, there's part of the fan base that could say that, but I think if you're running Everton, you say, well, I'm not having that. At the end of the day, we've been through a PSR crisis. Every million counts. Liverpool are offering us X more. Call it 10, call it 15 million or whatever the premium is. I do accept that there would need to be a premium, because in an ideal world, Everton do not want to sell to Liverpool. I get that. In an ideal where everybody's money's the same.
Yeah.
But if they do offer more, why not? Also, it's not as if we're in direct competition with each other, you know? It's not like we could knock them down another place, or they would finish in the Champions League spots if they didn't sell us Branthwaite. Of course, they're not going to like it. But at the end of the day, if we give them the money that gives them some headroom to buy a player or so that keeps them up, you know, who are the losers?
I think that's important to say as well, isn't it? And we're maybe talking ourselves into this, and it's ridiculous, but like
some would say
10 million to Everton is different to 10 million extra to us.
Yeah,
because we can argue about this, and people, you know, everyone will shout at me in the comments for FSG criticism and stuff, but the reality is 10 million at the level high end level doesn't move the needle that much. Whereas to Everton, it can be a player. Well,
because of the way PSR rules are, if you sell a player at a £10 million profit, which that increment would be effectively, right? You can buy a player, assuming an average contract length of 5 years, at 5 times that value, because you amortize the cost. So Liverpool giving Everton an extra 10 million would facilitate Everton buying an extra 50 million pounds worth of players in year one anyway.
Yeah.
That's no small potatoes, right? Yeah. That would be on top of, I think Branthwaite would be all profit. So let's say they sold him for 75 million to Liverpool. Let's pick a number. And firstly, that would give them all the headroom they'd ever bloody need. But the extra 10 million would be very, very useful.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So I think they'd have to be tempted, especially the player. Especially, actually, by the way, if Everton want to cash in on the player, and the player says, "I'm not going anywhere but Liverpool," then they don't have a choice either, short of like sticking him in the reserves for a year.
Yeah, which again would be crazy for a club in their position. Wouldn't it?
Yeah, would be crazy. So I don't. So I think, to round it up, I don't think this transfer will happen, and that those bookie odds are just an aberration because one or two people have got an idea in their head. But I actually think, in the realm of the hypothetical, I think stranger things have happened or could happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. To bounce back and forth from the game to transfers for the last sort of 10 minutes of this, we've got to talk about, someone asked about this on Twitter before, and I want to talk about it anyway. So I wanted to get your view on it. Well, two things. One, linked to the transfers, but I think linked to Slot's approach anyway. On the transfer side, it's interesting looking at, you know, people not making the squad and the bench we've already got, and then also saying we want more players. He's like, okay, well, where do these lads go in? You are going to end up with lads missing out here. But then the big thing I wanted to talk about was the ruthlessness, which ties into the emotional attachment thing.
Yeah,
I'm not sure we'd have ever. And again, someone could say I'm wrong here, but I'm not sure we would ever see Jurgen Klopp take off, especially a younger player, at half time. Especially in his first game. But the fact that he looked like he was prepared to do that without even breaking sweat. Like after the game, it didn't look like it was a difficult decision for him. He was like, and you know, looking at the stats, Quanza had won half of his 8 aerial duels. Canate came on and won 4 out of 5. And he made no bones about saying we weren't winning enough duels. And it wasn't just Quanza, but it was a team-wide thing. But when you're making one substitution, and it's you're off for him, because he's going to do something you're not doing for me. Yeah. And I've picked you as my first choice here. That's a big deal, isn't it? Don't you think, in his first game? Oh, it
100% did feel like a big deal. I think we might be in danger of sort of mythologizing what Klopp would and wouldn't do. I think that's going to happen for a while. Whilst things are good, I think, while things are good or bad, people that Klopp wouldn't do this, or Klopp would have done this, or Klopp might have got this wrong or this right.
Well, it's funny how, I always think it's funny how often his name's getting mentioned even in press conferences by the current manager. Yeah. You're like, well, I'm looking forward to that dying out, but we're still doing it, so we're part of the problem.
Can you imagine how it was for Bob Paisley back in 1975?
I think that's probably partly why you need to replace that guy with a more laid-back manager, isn't it? Because imagine if you replaced, you were saying there, Joe, when you bring in a Clough to replace that legend, it causes murder. If you bring in a Mourinho to replace a Klopp, he's going to be like, stop talking about Klopp, talk about me. Whereas when we've replaced Shankly and when we've replaced Klopp, we've replaced them with a much more mild-mannered person who's like, yeah, we can talk about Jurgen as much as you want, it's fine.
Mild-mannered, but on balance, you're right. It is quite a ruthless thing to do. But I think where people get it slightly out of perspective is if Klopp drops Jarrell Quanza last season or pulls him off hooks him at half time, as a young player who'd come through against the odds and was on a journey, it's one of those where you go, I'm destroying a young boy's confidence and the formative part of his career, right? In the first team. And that's why Klopp doesn't do that, you would think. But Arne Slot's just walked in the door. How old's Jarrell Quanza? He's not 15. Sorry, he's not even 16 or 17. He's not Train Ione. He's 21. He may even not be miles off 22 even. He's walked in and and Ibu Konate is 23, I think, maybe. So he's basically Slot's walked in the door and he's gone, at the end of the day, I've just replaced my 21-year-old centre-half with one of my 23-year-old centre-halves who I think can do that a bit better. It's not. You know what I mean? He's not, in his head isn't the narrative that would be in Klopp's head, because he knows. Let's put it this way: he'll have known Jarrell Quanza for the entire time 8-9 years he was at Liverpool. He'll have not seen that boy grow up, so he has to have that in his mind. Was for Arne Slot, I don't think he has to. I'd be interested to know if Slot would have done that if it had been one of his prodigies at Feyenoord, right? But also, I think it does speak to the fact that Slot is at the moment, I think he's very in the zone. He's very in the win now business. You could see it in pre-season. I thought the most fascinating thing in pre-season was that first proper pre-season game. I think it was Real Betis in America. And he picks two false nines, two tens, doesn't he? And everyone's going, oh, this is interesting. Does this signal the way forward for Slot? A really interesting innovation. No centre forward. And he said afterwards, no, I just didn't have a striker with me. Jota wasn't back and Nunes wasn't back. So I want to win the game. So you know what? He didn't think, oh, I'll just keep the shape I might play when the real stuff goes, because I want to see what that looks like. It's all slightly the opposite. It's a different tone to Klopp, who were never asked about pre-season goals. Results don't matter at all. They do not matter one iota. It's about fitness. Slot was really quite different to Klopp in his approach. No, we need to win games. And if the journalists try to put words in his mouth, because of course the most important thing isn't winning the games, is it, Arne? At this stage, it's about fitness. He goes, we want to win the games. He didn't say they were the be-all and end-all, but he wasn't letting talk of not wanting to win get shut down. Yeah. And there is a vibe, which we can buy into for now, especially as he is winning games, that he has a focus. And that's interesting, and also exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I like and something, the ruthlessness around Quanza. I think the other side of it is, which ties into what you were saying, if you Quanza, there's almost a backhanded compliment in it, that I'm treating you like a main guy.
There is that.
I'm just treating you like I would treat any main centre-back in my squad. I'm not treating you like a kid. Yeah. And any main centre-back in my squad who didn't play well in the first half, I'd take him off. Yeah. So you're just being treated like everybody else.
Well, you can't be flattered by being the man's first pick. He'd been at the club a matter of weeks and months, and he's deciding you, Jarrell Quanza, are the second best centre-half to Virgil van Dijk in this squad. Picked you against Sevilla, picked you first pick now. You can't take that compliment and that confidence boost, but then not take the man's opinion on board when he then goes, nope, you're not having the best game from my point of view this particular moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth saying as well, I mean, they're going to come up against different things all season, but we were all saying going into that game, 12:30 kickoff away against one of the newly promoted sides is not ideal. They're going to throw everything at you. On the TV, they were saying it was like the atmosphere was bouncing inside the ground. They're ready to, I mean... I wish I had a couple of quid for every time they mentioned Ed Sheeran being there. It's like, okay, now. And he got, did you know about that in the ground? He got off at half time.
Did he?
Yeah.
Why?
So they're making this big deal about it on telly. He's like, but he's got to get off at half time. So because he's got to go and do a gig in Serbia. I'm like, but he's in control of that. Sure. Like, he picks when he does his gigs, and don't tell me you're this huge Ipswich fan and then the first game of the season against Liverpool, you're pissing off at half time. Can you get a private plane? But anyway,
you definitely can get a private plane.
Exactly.
And what time's this gig? Was it like 2:30 or 3?
Exactly.
With private plane to Serbia.
How far is Serbia? 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Just get off straight after the match.
I can't believe there's not an hour he couldn't have. Well, they couldn't have even signalled. Ed will be running slightly late this season.
Yeah, exactly. He's been watching Ipswich. But anyway, the point of that was, we're playing away, and you could see in the first half like the energy they were putting into it.
Yeah.
And as the older, wiser, longer standing team in the Premier League. And I'm watching it from home going, yeah, well, it's not a great first half, but they're running their bollocks off here. And by the time we hit 60, it was like getting tired. Like, because as well, same thing. They said not only the pitch looks heavy, it's very hot. Like, yeah, you're going to be knackered on 60, fellas.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to start picking you off, which is effectively what we did. And just for the last bit of this, and we'll talk about the rest of the stuff I want to talk about on the Patreon show. It was a really good second half, wasn't it? Like, I think brilliant. we started to see we've seen it pre-season, but to see it in a Premier League game was nice. The type of football we're going to play. And I think you could already see as well, do you know his thing about when we've won the ball back, we don't have to keep... There have been a couple of... Have you got onto that? There have been a couple of sort of sideways criticisms of Klopp and Klopp football without him saying so much in interviews where he said... But he's blamed the players, basically. Got a lot of young players and they're always in a hurry to move the ball forward when we get it back. And I'm trying to train that out to them, because once you've worked to get the ball back, you want to keep hold of it for a while. Now, we want to find that balance between attacking quickly and not just giving the ball away constantly. And I think there were a number of times in that game where our players almost stood on the ball. Got the ball back and then just stopped. Yeah. And it was like they were looking at each other going, this is where we have a little breather.
That's right.
Because we're controlling things.
That's right. I noticed that. That was really evident. In the first half, you could, because we weren't controlling or breaking through, you could go, we're just not playing with enough tempo. Our attempt to be a bit more patient and passive on the ball, playing out from the back, overplaying from the back, weren't getting the ball quickly into the forwards, which was exposing their lack of pace. But by second half, you can see how it all came together perfectly. Yeah, what I noticed, there was a few passages of play where Liverpool didn't have just one chance during an attacking sequence. They had like 3 or 4, like shots getting blocked, crosses coming in. But what I noticed when the first couple of opportunities had happened and the ball ended up out, say, on the opposite flank from where it had started, maybe it started with Luis Diaz, it come to Trent. Trent would maybe stop, have a look up, come back into central midfield. Central midfield would go back to Van Dijk. They'd go side to side, have a little look, have a think, wait, and then go again. But also go again quite decisively with quite controlled aggression. That was really good to see. Danger getting carried away with it because you're playing against a tiring, newly promoted team. What's it look like against a better side? But we were getting in behind them for fun in that second half. I don't quite understand how or why, really. Slot said afterwards, I told them to start running in behind more. And I thought, well, don't we always want to run in behind? I mean, I don't quite understand it, but bloody hell, it worked.
I know, that is one of those things. It's a bit like, Joe, when you're getting a flight, this is a mad analogy. Joe, when you were getting a flight, and they'd say, we were delayed, but we've caught up some time. Because we've gone faster. And I'm always like, what? Just go faster anyway then. Yeah. Like, I don't understand. And this is where complicated football and people go, well, it's tactically, it's complicated. When they say things like that, I'm a bit like, that's not complicated though, is it?
No,
like,
you might
get in behind them more. Like,
might as well make your shots go in the goal more.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
exactly.
Yes, I mean, maybe Jota and Salah were coming short too much in the first half, wanting the ball into feet so they could link up with the attackers. Maybe that's what he meant, whereas they were on the turn and playing on the shoulder a bit more. That was evident. I mean, I thought Luis Diaz was our key. Not everyone wants to like Luis Diaz enough, in my opinion, but I thought he was our key performer in the second half in getting us up the pitch, getting in behind them initially and creating the spaces which were ultimately exploited from the right-hand side.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Diaz the other week, and I think the problem he's got is his numbers, isn't it? Like but then you say this a lot about footballers over the years, isn't it? It's like, well, if Diaz had Salah's numbers, he'd be the greatest player on the planet. He'd be in Messi, Suarez territory, and he's not yet. But maybe he can get better under Slot.
But also, when we say, we live in a stats football world now where we go, we can judge everything, the duels, the on ball value, whatever it is, and all kinds of new descriptors are out there. But when people talk about Luis Diaz, for example, and his end product, they're talking about only 2 metrics. goals, assists, the most obvious things. But I watched that Ipswich game back, and there's a number of players who would go, let's take Trent, for example. He puts a ball in right on Jota's head, and Jota should convert. I don't know what the XG will be, but it's pretty very, very high.
Yeah.
But Trent's denied an assist, really, by Jota not quite being on it for that one. Diaz does a great dribble in the second half, cuts one back. I think Soboslai is moving in on it. I think his shot's blocked. In another moment, the shot's not blocked, and Diaz walks off with an assist with some end product. But he doesn't get the end product thing there. No one talks about the assist before the assist.
Yeah.
I think I was talking to Steve I was at the match with and saying, I'd like there to be almost like an objective percentage measure for every goal of main contribution to this goal having happened that isn't to do with the goal scorer. Because sometimes there's a guy, and it's often a guy like Diaz, who skins 3, plays it inside to somebody else who gives a simple ball in behind, and the forward scores. Yeah. Now, the simple ball in behind relied on that guy making an intelligent run, say, to the one side of the guy dribbling and to play the ball. All the credit in the world. He gets the assist. But what about the guy who got you up the pitch and skinned 3 people beforehand?
That was the phrase I was just going to use that you used earlier, is to get you up the pitch.
Yeah.
The get you up the pitch stat is actually a really important stat in football, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, who's the guy that gets... Because he's basically breaking you out from defence to attack
in
one go. And he does that repeatedly, which he does, and keeps hold of the ball repeatedly. And I think this is the thing about stats, which is we're always... Loads of footy fans probably don't realise this. I don't think that, like, the stats that we look at, that we analyse football on, is like 10 years behind what the clubs are actually using to analyse footballers.
Yeah.
Which is why they're like, no, we love this player, and we don't give a shit what you all think about his goals and assists, because all of our data around him does talk about getting the ball up the pitch in whatever language.
But then again,
use.
have you read any of the stuff coming out from Ian Graham ahead of his promo tour, ahead of his book?
Yeah,
right?
I've seen bits, and it was interesting because I've been I think we might have mentioned one last week, but I've been thinking about, he's actually on a list I've got to talk to Rob about months ago about getting him on to interview, and now he's doing a book tour and everyone else has got him, so it's too late. But go on, what were you going to say about it? Well, I think it's fascinating, the stuff he talks about.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's incredible stuff. He goes, the excerpts I read, I think they were serialised in the Times. He was talking about all the transfers on the big important transfers under Klopp, and about and Klopp's attitude to his department. So at the end of the day, it sounded like me, in short, like a hell of a lot of those transfers were Klopp coming to them and going, I want to sign Sadio Mane and Joel Matip, for example, and them looking at their data and going, yeah, they score 2 well for us as well. So everyone's in agreement. Ian Graham said they couldn't really get Klopp very interested in stats at all. Said his attention span on them was like 5 minutes worth.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting
He said he would respect their process, and if they came up with some names, you said these guys are scoring highly, go, okay, fine, okay. Like Andy Robertson scored very highly, and he was able to sort of ask them a few questions. But it was quite traditional in his approach. Like Klopp said of Robertson, can he attack? And they said, oh, you sure can do that. All his numbers show he's a really good attacking fullback. He wasn't asking how many crosses, what his on-ball value was, or he wasn't asking that. He goes, can he attack? And they went, he's a really attacking fullback.
Yeah, well, but I don't know, there was a line in it, in one of the bits I saw about him a week or so ago, that I thought was quite interesting, because I've seen this over the years in different parts of business. It's like if you're working with a web developer and there's a certain language web developers use, and most people don't speak that language.
Yeah.
So you need an interpreter in the middle.
Yeah.
And the interpreter takes what the web developer says and translates it to everybody else so it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
Ian Graham sort of alluded to Michael Edwards being that guy.
Yeah.
That, we wouldn't talk to Klopp because we couldn't keep his attention, because we talk in data.
Yeah.
But we talk to Michael Edwards in data, and Michael Edwards would almost be like, leave it with me, guys.
Yeah.
I'll translate this to Jurgen in language E. So he'd take all the data and then go, this is a very basic example, but go into Jurgen and go, runs fast, scores goals. And Jurgen would go, sounds good to me. I like lads who run fast and score goals. And you're like, yeah, do you know what I mean? I know that's very basic.
No. I think that's exactly what came across. Because Klopp was very big on Joel Matip early on, apparently, because he'd seen him in Germany a lot. And he was telling people inside Liverpool, we've got to get him. Their data was showing that he had a mistake in him in every other game, something like that. But then Michael Edwards said he was under a lot of pressure. He went to watch Matip himself, ran the numbers again, and came back and said, Jurgen, yeah, we're convinced Matip looks great. And they went with it, which is fascinating. The other one that fascinated me from Ian Graham's, the excerpt of Ian Graham's book, is the Sadio Mane thing. You know, we always talk about how Liverpool have this stringent criteria. It's often used, the Anfield app, they always talk about the no dickheads policy, right? Sadio Mane, he ticked all the numbers boxes for the stats guys. He was a big favourite of Jurgen Klopp's. He'd watched him for a while and wanted him. When Michael Edwards went to do his background checks, his character references came across badly. He'd been argumentative, late for training. He just came across as a bit of a wrong'un. So he wasn't passing that no dickheads test. But they decided to go for it nevertheless, according to Ian Graham, right? And Ian Graham said he turned out to be a model professional. Never had a day's problem from Sadio. So
that's interesting.
It is interesting, the whole thing.
I want to talk more about this, right? But we've already run over, so there's a little tease if you'd to come over to Patreon. We're going to talk more about this because I want to talk about the challenge facing Richard Hughes, which I think there's already murmurings that he's going to be the fall guy for if we don't sign players. But I think there's a twist in the story that we need to talk about. We didn't get around to talking about Mo Salah, which we're going to. I want to have a chat about Chelsea, and then some random shit that we like to chat about. There's lots of, I've been keeping my eye on the comments, and there's not much to share with everyone, but there is lots of Diaz is our best player, Diaz isn't our best player chat going on, and then a lot of would we swap Gordon for Diaz, which we've done before. We might carry on chatting about stuff like that. We might have a little bit more transfer talk. Come and join us on the Patreon show. Last little reminder, well, you can join whenever, but at the start of the season, we're doing a fantasy football league. If you want to join, there's the code and the link underneath this show on YouTube or on podcast, wherever you are. That's it. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.